What's happening, guys? Welcome to Saints News Network. I'm John Hendrix. And look, right now we're going to be waiting for a couple people, but Saints making moves. They got a linebacker, so everybody can breathe a little bit easier now. So they ended up trading with the Cleveland Browns to move up to 74th overall. So basically what they ended up doing was they traded their 88th pick, or their pick in the third round, the 88th overall, and then they also sent a third rounder next year to Cleveland. And so in this process too, the Saints are going to get back a seventh rounder from Cleveland for 244th overall. So look, they used it to take Zack Baun, linebacker from Wisconsin. This guy, we just interviewed him not that long ago, and man, I tell you, he's really excited about being in New Orleans. I mean, some had him pegged as a first-round talent. There's Brendan Boylan. He's there. Our man working really hard with the videos. What's happening, Brendan?
Man, I was just happy that it was a little different than yesterday because I didn't have a video ready for yesterday. I had to set up a camera and be ready to go. So today, at least it was, I kind of guessed a little bit correctly. It was one of about 10, 15 guys that we had said, there's a real possibility the Saints could get. So we had that ready to go.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so like I was explaining some of the stuff on the trade aspect. So for all intents and purposes, with the way Teddy Bridgewater's deal factored in with the Panthers, the Saints should get a compensatory third round pick back for this trade. So I wouldn't say it's a total wash because your compensatory picks are usually going to be lower down the totem at the end of the third round. Obviously, that's where you're looking at. So, but still, with Zack Baun, they get a guy who is you can play all over the board. I mean, versatility, we've talked about it before, but versatility is a theme with the Saints, right? And so it doesn't matter if you say I play guard. Oh, no, you don't. You play everything for the Saints, or just the same thing with the linebacker position. You play everywhere. So the Saints covet that versatility. From what I see on him, he's definitely a good pass rushing specialist. He can play in coverage too, but I think he's going to offer some good run support, and I think he's going to be a kind of one of those heat-seeking missiles. So, look, it'll be interesting to see what happens ultimately. Brendan, what about your thoughts on him?
Well, doing some research and doing these videos for him, the thing that really pops off in terms of the stats is nearly 20 tackles for loss last season. Obviously, you mentioned pass rush specialist, a guy that can really get to the football. He had some moments in coverage where he was able to disguise the back off and made a couple plays on the ball. So if that's what the Saints are wanting to do, is be more of like a true 4-3 outside linebacker, there's a little bit of work to do, but a guy, like you said, who's very versatile. He can run side to side, has a tremendous amount of speed on him. So at the end of the day, hopefully some Saints fans can breathe a little bit and go, okay, you might have been shocked or maybe even disappointed by the pick yesterday, but to grab this kid in the third round, it's a steal.
Yeah, look, and you said the Saints had met with him before. So first time was at the Senior Bowl game. Had a formal interview with him, and then he had a informal one at the Combine. So look, he feels good about it. He says the Saints are a perfect fit for him. One of the things was his injury history potentially, but he said that was back in 2017. So he said he's been relatively clean and fresh since then. So that's a good thing for the Saints. I know some people are feel a little bit different. I was wondering if they would be able to land Logan Wilson. So look, it would have been interesting. So we've got some questions rolling in or some other things. So Son of Nola says the next pick will be Thad Moss at LSU. That'd be interesting for sure. I could see a tight end, but also in that fourth round, I could see a wide receiver if the people fall. I mean, there's no telling what's going to happen. This draft has been absolutely crazy, especially with, Jalen Hurts going to the Eagles. I think that's been one of the craziest picks I've seen on day 2 so far, but, I haven't checked in the past several picks because we've been talking with Baun and such, so we'll talk with Mickey Loomis soon too. John Smith asks, and I'll toss this one to you, Brendan, first, is who has a better career, Baun or Queen? Careful how you tread on this one.
That's
there might
tough.
be a lot of
That's
LSU
tough.
people.
Yeah, kind of tread water here, but it's tough because they play entirely different spots. At least they did in college. So trying to compare the two would be difficult. I think NFL career-wise, if Baun's meant to be more of, like John said, a heat-seeking missile, a guy who could be a big playmaker on third down, he's in a good system for it. But you talk about a great landing spot for Patrick Queen and a team that's really put out great linebackers over the years. He found a really good situation as well. So I think that's going to be a question to be answered to see how each of those teams uses them at the linebacker spot. I think they could be used very differently, but I think Queen landed in a good spot. I think Baun landed in a good spot as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. It looks like there's a lot of good feedback on here. A Facebook user says, and down goes Brady, another sack from Zack Attack. I like that. And see, Jonathan McDonald says, I like the pick, and somebody really happy with Baun. So look, I think it's really, you waited yesterday. I think, again, I believe the Chargers probably traded in front of the Saints to get Kenneth Murray. That's just my belief. But, look, I think you can justify the I keep wanting to say Cesar Ruiz pick. There's way more you can justify there. And obviously he's going to push Larry Warford. And then on day 2, we thought they were going to trade up into the second round, but, Sean Payton said last night that he was going to also be patient with it. There are a lot of players that they had a high grade on. Again, Mel Kiper Jr. had a first round grade on Baun. So, he thought the Patriots would be a good target for him. I've seen his draft comparison to Kyle Van Noy. That's a good one right there. So look, I think the Saints got a great player. My favorite was going to be Logan Wilson out of Wyoming, but that didn't last long. So I think when it's all said and done, they have a good piece of the puzzle, and it's only going to make them better. Matt Lawrence says, love the pick. Could be a steal in the third round. I agree. Let's see. Another question. Let's see. We'll ask this one. What do you think? Brendan says, if Jacob Eason is there in the 5th round, do we take him?
In the 5th round? Man, that boy would fall from 2nd to 5th. I don't know. I think if he's there in the 5th round, you certainly have to think about it. The one knock I have on Jacob Eason, especially being a guy who's covered some sports in Georgia over the years, is while he was at Georgia, everybody was blown away by this kid's arm talent, but the accuracy wasn't really there. If you watch some of the draft coverage on ESPN tonight, they gave you the statistics of how his completion percentage would go down per quarter as the defense settled in, was able to do some different things to him. So he's a project, and if you want to take a strong-arm quarterback as a project in the 5th round, I'm A-okay with that.
Absolutely. So Phil Guy 316 says, who dat? Join us, it looks like, from YouTube. Son of Nola 75 says, can we get a 4th round pick for Larry Warford? I honestly think they could get better for that if they could have got and again, if they don't trade him, because I think if memory serves me right, I think they got a 5th for Ben Grubbs when they shipped him off to Kansas City and stuff. So I think there's a lot that can go into it. But look, even if they don't trade Warford, right, they push him for competition, and in the worst case, if they release him, I think they'll gain like $8 million. And way the salary cap works, so it kind of will work out, I guess, either way. So, Peyton was adamant about saying the reason why they got him is Ruiz is to push to be a starter. They didn't draft him to be a backup. And, again, you look at the interior line, the way it kind of crumbled against the Falcons last year and the Vikings. I mean, you just can't have that. And I get the emphasis is on defense, but I mean, this is a defense that had played really well in a lot of situations. And in that Vikings game, I mean, you guys remember it, hopefully, is the defense was getting a lot of stops, and they made a great second half adjustments, and were really putting the ball back in New Orleans' hand from the offensive side of the ball. And, unfortunately, they just weren't able to do much, especially because they were just overloading that interior. So, again, Ruiz is a guy I think that's going to come in here. I think he prefers to be center. McCoy might kick out to guard, but, we'll see how it plays out, and it's going to be really important. So really interesting to see. Here's a good one for you. Let's see. Chris Bell says, I'm very happy with these 2 picks, 2 needs. Jerry Poor Jr. says, great pick, and thank you, Browns. Yeah, it's funny because it looks like Sean Payton kind of subtly tipped his hand on Twitter earlier saying something about it. That's just wild to me. Brennan, I'll ask you this. So John Smith says, so then do we sign Winston as a Breeze replacement?
Something like this got asked earlier while Bob and I were on, and I think Bob said you and him were on the same page about it. I'm not against it at all. Listen, I understand that Winston threw 30 picks last year. He threw 30 touchdowns. He was a Heisman Trophy winner, #1 overall pick. If you can convince him to take a contract, I don't want to say similar to Teddy Bridgewater, but come in on a 1-year deal, $4 or $5 million for the year, be the backup, and prove to us that you could be the successor. I'm all for that, because you get a guy who can sit and learn and maybe improve on a couple of things. But at this point in time, I don't know if Winston wants to do that. I think Winston really wants to compete for a starting job in camp, and there's enough teams out there. I don't think Cam Newton or Jameis Winston are going to have a problem at least getting into a camp to compete for the starting job.
Yeah, look, and I'll tell you, Winston, I'm not sold on Jameis Winston coming in playing for the Saints, right? You throw it out, and here's what I'll tell you. This is Sean Payton said it again. Take it for what it's worth. It comes straight from the horse's mouth, right? Is he said that they're definitely going to have a third quarterback on the roster who's going to be active on game day. So whoever they take is going to be active in that lineup. And, I would foresee that Taysom Hill's, he's already said he still wants to play special teams. So I don't know how much or what his role is going to look like completely in 2020, but I would imagine that they're going to get a guy that's going to, be able to fill in. Look, it's not a super crazy, flashy one, but Joe Flacco is a guy to keep an eye out on. I saw somebody say Andy Dalton. Again, it's going to see what's happened in Cincinnati. I don't know if they'll trade him because, but they also have a pretty large cap hit for him this year in Cincinnati. So that'll be interesting to see. Other guys could fall through the cracks, and I wouldn't be surprised if they get some type of undrafted guy to come compete in camp. But, they're going to have the 3 quarterbacks on the roster this year for sure. Mark, let's go with your gut reaction here, Brendan. What grade do you grade? Let's see. What do you grade the linebacker pick of Baun?
I think when you look at it and you see the different grades and projections that he got from different people, some, like you said, Mel Kiper, it was a first-round grade. A lot of people had him going not just in the second round, but early in the second round, the first half of that second round. I think the way that the board fell and the fact that you were able to go up and get him, it has to be like a B+, if not higher. Obviously, the big question is how do you utilize them? And I like the comparison to Kyle Van Noy, because if the Saints are able to do with Baun what the Patriots did with Kyle Van Noy, then you have a heck of a football player. But like I said, it's going to be a little bit of an adjustment from going from being a real edge rusher to kind of coming inside a little bit more and being that outside linebacker, whether that's weak side, whether that's strong side, whatever the Saints choose to do there. It's going to be a little bit of an adjustment. But right out the gate, I'd say for value purposes, it's got to be a B+.
Yeah, look, I think B or maybe B- at this point. I see a lot of potential here, right? But I'm also not ready to totally crown the move because you still got training camp, and we're not going to have a spring off season program or anything. So again, I think that the Peyton made the pick, and he's definitely seems like a guy who's super smart. He's super eager. He just felt like a bolt of lightning when we talked to him on the media conference call, or the Zoom call, excuse me. So I'm excited to see what he brings. I think his film looks fantastic. I think it's going to translate well in the next level. He's repped by the same agency as Marcus Davenport. So he said he's going to reach out to Marcus a little bit and talk. And then he played with Ryan Ramczyk for a year. So he said he was going to reach out to Ramczyk and talk to him a little bit too. So going through some of the other comments, it says, why wouldn't Winston want to play with Kamara and Michael Thomas? Well, it's not necessarily. Anybody should want to play with Kamara and Michael Thomas, right? I think, it's just going to come down to the right situation, and you should know what you're going to get when you come to New Orleans. There is a potential that you could back up Breeze primarily, but you may just hold a clipboard, right? While Taysom Hill's off and running and is the de facto number 2. One says Winston's going to get nightmares seeing Cam Jordan every day in practice. Yeah, I could see that for sure. Blake Widmer says we could get a trade deadline wide receiver too. Several quality guys are in a contract years on weaker teams. That's always something that's in play for sure. I would tell you that, hey, keep an eye out. Maybe they deal Wilford for somebody like that. Or, a lot of things happen, and everybody should know this stuff with the coronavirus is really one of those things that, hey, this could change everything once this dies down, because you'll start seeing, I guess, the second wave of free agency, if you will. And I'm sorry, guys, that my phone is totally blowing up. But like I said, we're expecting to talk to Mickey Loomis anytime here. See, Chris Bell said, I'd rather have a chair out there than Joe Flacco. I mean, again, I get what it is. Rayner says, who dat from Munich, Germany? John Smith says he still has high hopes for Caden Ellis. No, I do too. Again, that's the underrated part. I mean, linebacker, when you look at it, Alex Anzalone obviously is coming back from injury. He's in a contract year. You have Caden Ellis is coming back from an unfortunate injury, and then Kiko Alonso got hurt. He had a thigh injury that forced him out of the lineup Thanksgiving against the Falcons, but then he comes back, and it's unfortunate that he had the ACL issue. But look, he took a pay cut to play with his team, and he's betting on himself by making it up in incentives. So I feel good about that. Anzalone, I mean, man, if this guy can stay healthy for full 16 games and be in the playoffs, this guy just is just something on the field. So you get a guy like Baun in the lineup and then Ellis to back up and stuff, and you still have Craig Robertson as depth, and then what we have with Demario Davis. So that'll be interesting. Chris says he likes the undersized edge rusher, and Von Miller shown that they can be monsters. What's something that you see when you stand out with Baun?
His hands. Especially being undersized and going up against some massive human beings, 6'7" tackles, your hand placement and how you use your hands has to be crucial against those big offensive linemen, especially those tackles. They move their feet really well. They're really quick with their feet, especially if you're playing at such a high level. So getting that hand placement and getting leverage is so important for some of those edge rushers, and he does that very well. The other thing that he does very well is when he drops back into coverage, he understands the times to go ahead and attack. Not completely leaving his zone, but understanding if the quarterback gets flushed, he trusts his speed enough to be able to disrupt the throw or come in and get the sack. So those two things, his speed, his instincts, and of course the hand placement when he's rushing the edge.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I think there's a lot to love about this pick. And so, again, most people sit on their hands. It's like, oh my gosh, this is the Saints, and they do this every year. Y'all should know this by now. But they have a great group of evaluators there, that college team. Jeff Ireland, I mean, it's not just him. They have a whole team that does this. So he has a huge hand in this. Ruiz is not, again, it's not a sexy pick for anybody, right? But, when you think about an offensive lineman that could play for 10 years, just like Eric McCoy was last year, I mean, this is going to be interesting. Michael asks when we pick again, that's going to be in the 4th round. I believe it's, quote me on it, I forget. I have to look it up and see. We draft, it's like 120 something, I forget. But it'll be interesting to see what they have. Brendan, what do you think, early thoughts, what do you think they could look at in the 4th round?
I think you pointed to it. I think wide receiver is still a need. I did a piece about Traquan Smith, this potentially being a make or break year. He has a really good opportunity to prove himself in camp to be the solidified 3rd receiver, and that's including if the Saints draft someone. But, this is one of the deepest wide receiver drafts of all time. Mike Detillier said in his 35 years that this is the deepest wide receiver class that he has covered. So the Saints could still get pretty good value in the 4th round at the receiver spot. And then I think the question that I've continued to ask, and Bob and I have talked about, is the quarterback coming in this draft class? We had the question earlier, if Eason or Fromm is there in the 5th round, do you pull the trigger? Potentially. I don't think that's a 4th round selection. I think you really have to key in on wide receiver in the 4th round. Yeah,
that's kind of where I go, and I could also make a case for a running back too. I mean, I'm not going to let go of Darrington Evans out of Appalachian State. I think he's somebody that could come in. He's a Sean Payton. He is my guy. I love this guy. He's a Sean Payton running back. If you watch his film and look at him, he's great. So let's see, Baum can cover, or your Baun, he's covering tight ends, killed the defense, seems like forever. Yeah, maybe a little bit. I think that's eased up a lot. And here's what I'd say too. This is why you trade in essentially Von Bell for Malcolm Jenkins. You get a guy, but Bell is excellent in run support. Jenkins is much better in pass coverage. And not only that, veteran, he's very smart. When you look at what Tom Brady and all the weapons that they have there, I'm not as worried about Rob Gronkowski as some people are. I mean, if this is 5 years ago, I'd be a lot more worried, but it's not. So he's got to still have an uphill battle, if you will. John Smith says, let's not forget the Saints are finding good undrafted free agents. Deontay Harris, Shai Tuttle, Carl Granderson. Yes, they're fantastic. I mean, this has been something. It's not something new. Yes, thank you, Christopher. It is 130 overall. That's their next pick. And then they've got the 5th at 169th, 6th at 203, and then 7th at 244. So that'll be interesting. John Smith, again, he's asking, let's see, what receivers are left that you like? What do you think?
I'd have to look at the board, honestly. You said the last few picks, we've been busy with some other things. I'm not sure how the board has fell. I'll have to take a look at that. And
yeah, I'd have to look too. But again, my favorites coming into today were Devin Duvernay out of Texas. I don't know if he's still on the board again. I haven't checked. It's been a minute. And then if it's a 4th round pick, Courtney Davis out of Texas A&M University would be my guy. I think he could be really something for it. So T says Amik Robertson is a pick. I mean, quarterback is a need, and I think some people might be sleeping on it. Saints were interested in AJ Terrell. They talked about him trading up potentially for him and Kinlaw, the South Carolina defensive tackle. But quarterback is a need because you know what you have with Janoris Jenkins and Marshawn Lattimore, right? And behind that, that's where it kind of gets a little bit of question mark because you do have Patrick Robinson, again, another player who took a reduced salary to be able to stay with the Saints. And again, I think Robinson's got some strengths to him, but they'll just have to see how that plays out. And then you got PJ Williams behind him. So, and then you're looking at Justin Hardy, who's more of a special teams guy, maybe not somebody you want to throw out totally in coverage. I mean, he's willing to do it. I'll just tell you that. But you got a legitimate need for a 3rd cornerback on this roster. So I don't think it's a crazy idea. Michael says, since the Ravens got J.K. Dobbins, do we give the Ravens a 5th round for Mark Ingram? He ain't coming back. I don't think so.
He's not coming back. And honestly, that pick to get Dobbins to pair with Mark Ingram and Lamar Jackson, that was a heck of a pick by the Ravens. They're going to be really scary on the ground. Obviously, there's still question marks through the air, but I don't think it was a Mark Ingram replacement immediately. I think it's an eventual, but pairing them together for 2 years is going to be a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, another guy that went, I didn't see this, but Brian Edwards was another favorite I had for today. He went to the Raiders at 81st. So looking at the board right now, Duvernay's still there. I think Colin Jefferson, the Texans, still there, but I'd rather Duvernay personally. So, look, I think there's a lot of potential wide receivers they can get on day 3. I mean, it's going to be interesting again who's there. Chris asks, I know it's not a draft question, but it says, how do you feel about the addition of Emmanuel Sanders, and do we still need another wide receiver? Yes, please get another wide receiver. We have to. And I'll tell you this, and you said it a little bit, Brendan, too, but talking about Traquan Smith, and he's weird to figure out, right? Because the first year, I remember reading or hearing that, he was having struggles catching on to the playbook. And even last year, there was problems. He's just not on the same page with Drew Brees for whatever reason. And, I think they got to bring somebody in here to push him. Obviously, you got Deontay Harris on the roster. You have a couple of other guys that might be more for run blocking. You bring back Tommy Lee Lewis. And then you also pick up Maurice Harris, who's I think is going to be one of those interesting guys to keep an eye out on in training camp. So for me, I'm all about getting another wide receiver, a legitimate 3rd wide receiver that you can roll into the slot or play on the outside because you can switch Emmanuel Sanders to either. And then, my ideal person would be to get somebody who could actually, work those short and intermediate routes. Breeze, if he doesn't have the deep ball like he used to, get the guy who can take a quick little pass and then be able to go. And then Michael just tells me Devin Duvernay just got to the Ravens. Oh my gosh, that hurts me. But hey, that's crazy. So, but what do you think about Sanders, Brendan?
Well, I think the one thing I really like about Emmanuel Sanders is, though he's 33 years old, he can still take the top off the defense. And yeah, Teddy Ginn could do that as well, but you saw Ginn's production numbers go down a lot because they realized that's the only thing he could do. Ginn wasn't a guy that really went across the middle a whole lot. He made some big catches across the middle, but Sanders able to take the top off. He's able to run just about every route. That's going to open up room underneath for Jared Cook over the middle of the field. It's going to open up some short things for Michael Thomas, who just is exceptional all over the field, but especially in those 5 to 7 or 8 yard routes. I'd say that's really Michael Thomas's bread and butter. And then, like I keep saying, that opens up opportunities for Traquan Smith, because if you have all these other things happening, there's going to be zones of space in a defense that you're going to be able to find. This is, like I said, it's a make or break year for Traquan. I still have hope. Not that he's going to be this outstanding wide receiver, but he is a guy who could catch 35, 40 balls for you and at least be productive. Let's not forget, though, John, he did have 5 touchdown grabs last year.
Yeah. No, I mean, and that's good. Obviously, that's important too. But, it's just when you're talking about moving the chains, I mean, Ted Ginn Jr., let's just face it, he could only really run the one route, and he still had some struggles with some drops. I mean, it just wasn't the best football that you've seen Ted Ginn play, whereas, some of the other years that he was with the Saints. So, look, again, I think it's an important season for him, so we'll have to see. Kieran had said we need more secondary help. I agree. Just talked about that. I don't think necessarily safety. I feel like they're set there because you've got Williams, Jenkins, CJ Gardner-Johnson. You can roll PJ Williams if you want. You also have Saquon Hampton, JT Gray, a special teams guy. Shoot, you have Johnson Batamosi as well, who's going to compete for special teams. And then you bring back DJ Swearinger. So I think they're set in the safety position, but cornerback is what I'm thinking. Dustin says Thomas, Sanders, Cook, Hill, Kamara, enough said. I mean, don't forget about Latavius Murray. I think he's very underrated to this offense, so don't forget about him. John says, again, he's asking about a veteran wide receiver like Taylor Gabriel. Look, I'm all about some of these guys that they're still out there. I mean, before they picked up a linebacker, I was really adamant about potentially Nigel Bradham joining the team and as a linebacker, and even Alec Ogletree, which, I'm thinking not the Giants version of Alec Ogletree. I'm thinking of, the Rams version of that. So, look, I think it'll be interesting and to see how it plays out. Again, and here's the other part. So, you're going to carry a 90-man roster. And last I checked, I think even if you add in the 2 draft picks, they're at 71. So you'll probably see at least, 5 to 10 undrafted guys. They'll probably bring up some veterans or some other things in training camp as this goes along. But, it's probably going to be a little bit of a waiting game too, because, I mean, again, you don't have a spring off-season program. So the guys this team is getting, I mean, you've noticed they're getting keeping a lot of their own. And, Sean Payton is putting a lot of faith and responsibility on these players that have been here, that know this culture, to make sure that they're doing what they can off the field to stay in shape, because Lord help them if they show up overweight or anything like that. But I don't think we're in a situation with this. I mean, if this was a 2014, 2015 Saints, then I might have some concerns, but I don't think so. Not this time. What about you, Brennan?
Yeah, I think those are excellent points. Everything with the virus that's going on, it kind of puts a little bit of a wrench in everything. You mentioned it earlier. You're not seeing a lot of these guys get signed, and you'll have a quote-unquote second wave of free agency. So, yeah, you're not going to have the big splash names, but there's a lot of quality guys. I like that you brought up Alec Ogletree, a really good run-stopping linebacker. And I know Bob and I talked about him a little bit earlier as well. You have guys like that. Taylor Gabriel's another good example, a guy who's coming off of a poor year in Chicago, but remember how he lit it up with the Atlanta Falcons just a couple years ago. So there's a lot of guys still available. When it comes to worrying about guys coming into camp overweight or anything, this is a really unique Saints locker room. I don't know if I've seen a football team like this over the last couple of years I've been covering the Saints and in the NFL especially. It's really unique that all these guys really love each other, want to win for each other, root for each other. There's a swagger to it. There's a confidence to it. And I think this team knows, if we know as analysts, if we know as fans that this is Drew's last run, that locker room knows. And if you want to talk about one of the most well-respected guys, not just in the locker room, but the league, it's Drew Brees. And I can guarantee there's plenty of dudes in that locker room that want to win one more Super Bowl and let Drew kind of ride off into the sunset. Absolutely.
Wrapping up here, guys, and thanks for tuning in for sure. I mean, it's going to be crazy tomorrow too. John's asking, here's a thinking outside the box. What about trading for Josh Rosen with Miami, taking Tua? I'm all for it. I just don't know what the Dolphins are. I don't know compensation wise. That's my only question. I mean, the Dolphins are a familiar trade partner. I mean, we sent them Stephon Anthony for a 5th rounder, the other year, and then he comes back. So life finds a way, right? So I wouldn't be surprised to see something like that happen. I like Rosen coming out of college. I don't think the fit. And you brought up the point about Gabriel, and I mean, Mitch Trubisky is a prime example. When you have inconsistent quarterback play, you can have these great wide receiver weapons, but if they can't do what they're supposed to do and the quarterback can't find them, then there's not much that you're going to be able to do and find success. Gabriel is interesting. I think he would be a good fit for this team, but we'll just have to see. And Smith also mentions Barron, so that'd be another one to look at. I like Barron too. He's very versatile. Isaiah Simmons, obviously, I think is the top draw that when you could compare. Maybe in the same conversation as Barron, but Simmons is probably that guy on steroids. So, Brendan, any parting thoughts before we wrap this up?
I'll just say thank you. There's a lot of people in the live comments in the chat that have been here, not just today, but through the whole first round. And as you said, John, we got a long day tomorrow and a long stream if we choose to do that. But thank you guys for just hanging out, asking questions, picking our brains. We love our jobs. I think I can speak for everybody on the staff. We love our jobs, but knowing that you guys will come out and read anything that we put out, hang out in these chats with us, that's the reason we do it, So we're really appreciative of you guys hanging out and look forward for another good day tomorrow and then hopefully a wonderful off season and a great regular season.
Absolutely. Yeah, guys, I appreciate the support and definitely follow us on our Facebook page at Saints News, si.com/NFL/Saints. Be sure to go through there and sign up if you haven't and leave us comments on the pieces. We'd love to interact with you and such and just talk. But, I mean, this is a crucial season that we're facing with the Saints. And, we're working on doing our best to give you the best coverage possible. So if there's any suggestions you have, thoughts, or any type of comments, anything that we can do to make things better to cover, we want to bring that unique perspective. So I'm a lot of the boots on the ground. So I'm in there with the press conferences, the locker rooms, all that stuff, games. So it'll be a very unique access that everybody gets going forward. And these guys here, Bob Rose, Kyle Mosley, Carla, and Brendan Boylan, they're all great. Aaron Miller as well. They do fantastic work. So please, please, please support them, support us. And if there's anything we can do to get better, let us know. Brendan, get some sleep, man. I'm going to try, but last night I didn't get to bed till about 2, and tonight it'll probably be a long haul too. So we'll see what happens.
I was in the same boat last night. I didn't get to bed till 2:00 my time, so hopefully we'll work it out and try to get a little bit of rest because it's early for you guys. It's 11 a.m. for you and 12 a.m. for me tomorrow. So we'll see you bright and early.
Yep, absolutely, guys. Have a great night. Thanks for tuning in.